I spent $20,000 on this vacation. 20,000. I drained my savings, maxed out a credit card, convinced myself I deserved it. And honestly, I thought I did. The Maldives. White sand, turquoise water, overwater villas where you could wake up to the sunrise pouring straight into your bedroom. I imagined sipping cocktails on a deck, laughing with my son, finally getting to experience that picture-perfect trip everyone talks about. But when we landed, when the wheels touched the runway, and everyone clapped like it was some miracle, my son leaned toward me. His voice was so quiet, almost playful, like he was about to tell me a joke. "Dad," he whispered, "I forgot to buy you a ticket. Go home." And I swear the entire world collapsed inward on me in that moment. I know you're confused. How could I be sitting on a plane, landing in paradise, if I didn't have a ticket? How could my son, my own son, forget me, exclude me, when I was the one paying for everything? I asked myself the same questions, over and over in those first few seconds. But there's one thing you need to know before we go any further. If I had listened to him, if I had turned around, boarded the next flight back, swallowed my pride and left him to his games, then maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you this story, because what came after was worse, so much worse. At first I thought it was a prank. My son had always had a dark sense of humor. He liked to poke at me, push buttons, act out little skits that made him laugh. I forced a chuckle, smacked his arm, told him to quit being weird, but he didn't laugh back. His eyes stayed locked on me, pupils blown wide like he hadn't slept in days. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm serious," he said, and that's when I realized his hands were trembling. I brushed it off, of course. I told myself it was jet lag, that maybe he was nervous about customs or passports or whatever nonsense. But my stomach tightened. Something in his voice made my skin crawl, like static running along my nerves. I tried to distract myself, looking out the plane window at the palm trees swaying in the heavy ocean wind. The Maldives. God, it looked beautiful. It was everything I'd paid for, everything I'd promised myself after years of grinding at work, after years of telling my son, one day we'll go somewhere special. But beauty has a way of disguising what's underneath. And if I'd looked closer at those waters, if I'd stared a little longer at the way the waves broke unnaturally against the sand, maybe I would have noticed. Maybe I would have turned back then. Instead, I stood up with everyone else, pretending nothing was wrong, while my son kept his eyes fixed on me, unblinking. Have you ever had one of those moments when reality fractures? When something so absurd, so impossible, happens that your brain can't keep up, and you just shut down? That's what happened to me at the gate. The airline staff scanned tickets one by one. Families shuffled forward, kids squealing about swimming pools, parents smiling politely. My son handed over his passport, his boarding stub. They waved him through, and then it was my turn. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the ticket I'd been given weeks ago. But when I handed it over, the woman behind the counter frowned. She scanned it once, twice, her lips pressed together. She tilted her head, glanced at me like I was some kind of problem to solve. "I'm sorry, sir," she said finally. "This isn't valid." I laughed nervously, insisted there must be a mistake. I showed her my passport, showed her the printouts, even pulled up emails on my phone. She shook her head slowly. "This ticket was never activated. It doesn't exist." And here's the part that still makes my blood run cold. When I turned to my son for backup, he didn't move. He just stared at me from the other side of the barrier, his mouth twitching like he wanted to say something but couldn't, or wouldn't. That's when I remembered his whisper. "Go home." Now I know what you're thinking. It's a clerical error, a glitch in the system. Airlines mess up all the time. And believe me, that's exactly what I told myself. I was humiliated, standing there while the line behind me grew impatient, people muttering under their breath. My son had vanished into the crowd ahead. I begged the staff to let me through, showed them my receipts, my bank statements, $20,000, proof that I had paid, but they kept shaking their heads, kept repeating the same phrase like it was rehearsed. "This ticket doesn't exist." I should have gone home. I should have demanded a refund, flown back, cursed my son for abandoning me. But something in their eyes, the way they avoided looking directly at me, the way they whispered to each other in a language I didn't understand, made me pause. It was like they knew something, like this wasn't a mistake. And here's where I'll admit something I'm not proud of. I was scared of my son. Not because he was violent, not because he threatened me, but because of the calmness, that quiet, deliberate whisper, that smirk he couldn't quite contain. It wasn't normal. It wasn't him. He had always been impulsive, emotional, loud when he was upset. But this was different. It was like he'd rehearsed it. Do you want to know the worst part? When I finally left the counter, defeated, dragging my suitcase like a condemned man, I caught a glimpse of something I can't explain. My son was standing at the edge of the terminal, half hidden by a crowd, his phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the window, at the ocean. And I swear on my life, his reflection in the glass didn't match his movements. His body shifted, his hand trembled, but the reflection stayed perfectly still. That's when I knew something was wrong. Horribly wrong. You need to understand, this isn't just about a vacation gone wrong. This isn't a petty family squabble or a booking error. If it were, I wouldn't be here, wouldn't be warning you. There's something about the Maldives, something about that water, something that takes people, replaces them, and convinces the rest of us that it's normal. I can't prove it yet, but I know my son isn't him anymore. Not completely. If you're still listening, if you haven't clicked away yet, I need you to remember this. When someone you love whispers, "Go home," listen to them. Because maybe, just maybe, they're not talking to you at all. Maybe they're warning you. Maybe they're warning themselves. And that's how it began. That's how I found myself standing in paradise, $20,000 poorer, alone, staring at the ocean and wondering if I'd just been betrayed by the one person I thought I could trust. But that was only the beginning. Because what came next made me wish I had gone home. If you've ever saved for something big, a wedding, a house, that once-in-a-lifetime trip, you know how it takes over your mind. Every paycheck, every little sacrifice, every dollar tucked away feels like a step towards something brighter. That's what this trip was for me. A promise, not just to myself, but to my son. I'd always told him, one day we'll go somewhere unforgettable. And after years of scraping by, after nights eating canned soup so I could squirrel away a little more, the day finally came. The Maldives. A word that felt like luxury itself. A paradise whispered in advertisements and travel blogs. Crystal waters, coral reefs, villas that looked more like postcards than reality. I pictured it over and over. Us laughing in the surf, him snorkeling for the first time, me leaning back with a drink, finally letting myself believe that maybe I hadn't failed him, because the truth is, I always carried that guilt, that I hadn't been enough, that after his mother left, I was the man scrambling to hold everything together with duct tape and prayers. This trip to me was proof that I could give him something extraordinary. But now, looking back, I realize I should have noticed the warning signs even then. The planning started 6 months out. I became obsessive. Every spare moment was spent comparing flights, calculating villa prices, reading reviews about the difference between ocean view and lagoon view. I was meticulous, too meticulous. My son, on the other hand, was strangely detached. At first I thought it was just teenage indifference. He shrugged at brochures, barely looked at pictures I showed him. When I asked what activities he wanted to try, diving, jet skiing, island hopping, he just muttered, "Whatever you think, Dad." That wasn't him. Normally he had opinions about everything. Video games, food, even what color towels we should buy for the bathroom. But when it came to this trip, he was passive. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers act weird. Maybe he was embarrassed to be seen caring too much. Maybe he didn't want to seem excited. But in hindsight, that passivity feels like something else entirely. Like he already knew more than he was letting on. There were other odd things too. When I showed him the resort's map, he pointed, not to the villas, not to the pools or spas, but to a shaded part of the island labeled restricted area. "What about there?" he asked. I laughed. "That's not for tourists. Probably staff housing or maintenance." He just nodded, but his eyes lingered on it for far too long. Another time, I caught him staring at his phone late at night, the glow casting sharp lines across his face. When I asked who he was texting, he locked the screen immediately. "No one," he said. And maybe that's true, or maybe it wasn't, but back then, I didn't want to question anything. I was too focused on the dream. We made countdown calendars. I crossed off days with a marker, imagining each X pulling me closer to a horizon of sunshine and waves. I worked overtime shifts, skipped lunches, told myself the exhaustion would all be worth it once my feet hit that sand. The more I sacrificed, the more determined I became. This wasn't just a trip, it was redemption, proof that I could still be the father he deserved. But obsession blinds you, and it blinded me. Even the booking process was strange, though I didn't recognize it at the time. When I went online to purchase the tickets, the website glitched, or at least that's how I explained it. Names appeared where they shouldn't. Random seat assignments that didn't match. At one point, when I tried to enter my own name, the system spat back an error. Passenger already accounted for. I assumed it was a bug, maybe because I had autofill on. I restarted the browser, cleared the cache. Eventually it went through, or so I thought, and when I double-checked the confirmation email, I swear my name wasn't listed at first, just his. But after refreshing, it appeared, tucked neatly under his. I didn't think much of it. Websites mess up all the time. But now I wonder if that was the moment it all began. Our family dynamic played into it too. I've always been the planner, the worrier, the one who makes lists for lists. My son, he's spontaneous, careless in the way youth can afford to be.
Or at least, he used to be. Somewhere along the line that shifted. He became secretive, withholding, like a shadow of himself. We fought sometimes. Petty things. Dishes left in the sink, grades slipping, him skipping curfews. But the trip was supposed to heal that. A fresh start, a shared adventure. And for a while it seemed like it was working. He even joked about learning to swim properly, about finally seeing if the ocean was as bottomless as everyone says. I laughed. I told him oceans have bottoms. He just stared at me and said, "Not all of them." It should have chilled me then. But I brushed it off as nonsense. The closer the departure date came, the stranger things felt. My son started packing early, weeks before, when normally he wouldn't have cared until the last minute. He packed things that didn't make sense. A journal he never wrote in, a small lockbox with no key, an old toy he hadn't touched since childhood. When I asked about it, he just shrugged. Meanwhile, I was the one panicking over travel-sized toiletries, passports, credit cards. I spent hours making sure nothing went wrong, because in my mind, this had to be perfect. This had to be the moment that proved we were still a team, that we could still share something meaningful. But deep down, I think he already knew it wouldn't be. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. The way he avoided eye contact when I talked about snorkeling. The way he smiled too wide, too forced, when I brought up all the money I'd spent. The way he lingered at the edge of conversations, as though he was only half listening. And the night before we left, as we zipped up our bags, he said something I still can't shake. "Dad," he murmured, "don't get too excited. Sometimes things look better in pictures than in real life." I laughed it off. Told him he was being cynical. Told him paradise was paradise, no matter what. But if I'd listened, really listened, maybe I would have realized he wasn't talking about the islands. He was talking about himself. Here's the thing about memory. It's a liar. When I replay those days in my head, I wonder if I'm twisting them, forcing meaning into coincidences. Was he really distant? Did the website really glitch? Or am I painting shadows where there were none, because of what happened later? I don't know anymore. All I know is this. Normalcy is a mask, and if you stare at it long enough, you start to see the cracks underneath. And trust me, once you see the cracks, you can never unsee them. If you're watching this, if you're rolling your eyes and thinking I'm just a paranoid father, then let me leave you with this thought. Every horror story begins as something ordinary. A vacation, a family, a dream, and every nightmare hides inside those ordinary things, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. That's why I didn't notice the first warning sign, or the second, or the third, because I was too blinded by paradise to recognize the hell underneath. And by the time I did, it was already too late. Airports are supposed to feel exciting, right? That buzzing energy of people heading off to new adventures, families lugging too many suitcases, kids bouncing with sugar highs from overpriced candy, announcements echoing in a dozen languages. That's what I thought I'd feel when we landed in Malay, stepping into the terminal, with the scent of sea air, just barely creeping in through the vents. This was the moment I'd imagined for months, the start of paradise. But instead of excitement, all I felt was off balance. Maybe it was the fatigue from the flight. Maybe it was that whisper from my son still echoing in my skull. "I forgot to buy you a ticket. Go home." I wanted to laugh it off. I wanted to believe it was just a joke. But as we joined the line at customs, my chest tightened. Everyone else seemed prepared. Tickets and passports clutched neatly in hand, smiles plastered across their faces. Meanwhile, when I pulled out my documents, something about them just looked wrong. You know how paper ages? How it yellows, curls at the edges, gets that faint musty smell? My ticket looked like that. Not crisp like everyone else's, not freshly printed. It looked like it had been sitting in a drawer for years. I rubbed my thumb across the ink, and it smudged. "Dad," my son whispered sharply, "don't make a scene. Just wait outside." I blinked at him. "What do you mean, outside? We just got here." "Please," he said, voice lower this time, eyes darting toward the uniformed staff. "Just wait outside. I'll handle this." Handle what? That's what I should have asked. But the way he said it, calm, almost commanding, made me freeze. This was not the son I knew. My son would have panicked, would have cracked a joke, would have begged me to fix it. But this version of him, he acted like he was in control, like he knew something I didn't. And maybe he did. The line moved forward, one family at a time. The officer behind the counter stamped documents with robotic precision. People laughed, stretched, tapped their phones. To them it was just another checkpoint. To me, it was the moment everything started unraveling. When it was our turn, I handed over my passport and ticket with a shaky smile. The officer scanned the passport without issue. Then she scanned the ticket. Her frown was immediate. She tried again, frowned deeper. She tapped a few keys on her terminal, looked at me, looked at the ticket, back at me. "Sir," she said finally, "this isn't valid." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean? Of course it's valid. Look again." She tried again. Same error. She turned the ticket over, held it to the light like she was checking for counterfeits. Her lips pressed together into a tight line. "This ticket," she said slowly, "does not exist in our system." Her tone was flat, rehearsed, like she'd had to say that line before. I felt the heat rise in my face. I pulled up the email on my phone, shoved it toward her. I paid for it. $20,000. It's right there. She barely glanced at the screen, shook her head, and then, here's the part that still haunts me. She leaned in just a fraction, lowered her voice, and muttered, "Not all passengers return." I froze. What? She didn't repeat herself. She straightened, tapped her keyboard again, and raised her hand. Another worker appeared, whispered with her in a language I didn't understand. I glanced back at my son, desperate for backup. He was already through the gate, standing a few feet away, hands shoved in his pockets. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad," he called softly, "just wait outside, please." His tone wasn't pleading anymore. It was final. The worker handed my documents back with stiff politeness. "Please step aside, sir." I felt the stares of the line behind me, tourists shifting impatiently, muttering. My face burned with humiliation. My heart hammered with something worse than embarrassment, fear. I wanted to demand answers. I wanted to scream at them until they acknowledged the absurdity. But something in their eyes, something cold and guarded, made me swallow the words, so I stepped aside. The chaos of the airport seemed to swallow me whole. Announcements blared, children wailed. The smell of fried food and jet fuel mingled in the air, but it all felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I clutched my suitcase and drifted toward the exit, every step heavier than the last. My son didn't follow. He stayed on the other side of the barrier, still not looking at me. That's when I realized the trip wasn't about me at all. Outside the terminal, the air hit me like a wall, hot, wet, the kind of humidity that sticks to your lungs. Taxi drivers swarmed, shouting offers, waving signs. A bus idled nearby, its engine rattling. And for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the sea in the distance. The turquoise water shimmered under the sun, beautiful and endless. It should have calmed me. Instead, it made my stomach twist, because that worker's words echoed louder than the chaos around me. Not all passengers return. Do you know what it feels like to be erased? That's what I felt in that moment. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. Like the world had shifted subtly to push me out of frame. Everyone else moved with purpose. Drivers, tourists, workers. But me? I stood on the edge, out of place, unwanted. And in the reflection of the terminal's glass doors, I caught a glimpse of myself, but the reflection didn't quite match. My mouth hung open, panting in the heat, but the reflection's lips were closed. I blinked, wiped at my eyes, looked again. Just me, sweaty and pale. Was it exhaustion? Jet lag? Maybe. That's what I told myself, because the alternative was too horrifying. I dragged my suitcase to a bench, sat heavily, and texted my son. "What's happening? Why won't they let me through?" He didn't answer. Instead, I got a single voicemail notification. When I played it, all I heard was static, and underneath it, a whisper so faint, I almost thought I imagined it. "Go home." I wanted to take the next plane back, retreat into the safety of my dull, ordinary life. But pride is a dangerous thing. Pride in love, or what I thought was love. I told myself my son needed me, that this was just a mix-up, something easily fixed. But deep down, I think I already knew. I wasn't supposed to be here, and whatever was waiting in paradise, it wasn't waiting for me.
Paradise isn't supposed to feel empty. When you see the brochures, the turquoise water, the soft white sand, the villas with glass floors, they're always bursting with laughter, champagne flutes, couples tangled in hammocks. Paradise sells itself on the idea of togetherness. But when I stepped onto the island, dragging my suitcase behind me, I felt like the only one there. At first, I blamed the weather. A storm had just passed, leaving the palms slick with rain and the air heavy with the scent of salt. Maybe everyone was still tucked away in their villas. That's what I told myself as I walked past rows of hammocks swaying gently, all empty. As I followed the narrow boardwalk stretching over impossibly clear water, I caught my reflection, warped and stretched across the waves, and it made me shiver. My son should have been there, walking beside me. That's how I pictured this trip, but he wasn't. He had vanished somewhere between customs and the ferry. No text, no call, just absence. The resort staff greeted me politely, too politely. Their smiles were wide, but their eyes darted, avoiding mine as though they didn't want to linger too long. "Welcome, sir," one said, bowing slightly. "Please, enjoy your stay." "Have you seen my son?" I asked. "Tall, black shirt, carries a blue backpack." The smile froze. The man's eyes flickered toward another staff member. Then he simply shook his head. "I don't know who you mean." I laughed awkwardly. "He checked in with me. His name is—" But before I could finish, the man cut me off. His voice was firmer now. "I don't know who you mean." It wasn't just him. Every time I mentioned my son's name, people stiffened. A housekeeper pretended not to hear. A bartender spilled a drink and walked away mid-conversation. A groundskeeper dropped his rake and hurried in the opposite direction. By the third day, I stopped asking, because it wasn't ignorance, it was avoidance. Luxury wrapped around me like a cruel joke. My villa was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows opening onto the ocean, a private pool shimmering under lantern light, fresh orchids on the nightstand. Every detail screamed perfection, and yet I ate every meal alone. I sat at long buffets piled high with lobster tails and exotic fruits, but no other guests ever came. At night, I swam in the pool, under a velvet sky heavy with stars, and every villa around me was dark, curtains drawn, as though no one lived there. It felt less like a resort and more like a stage set, meticulously prepared for an audience of one. The whispers started on the fourth night, not from people, from the island itself. It was when I wandered into the small village beyond the resort gates, desperate for human connection. The locals were friendly at first, waving, selling fruit, smiling with the kind of warmth that felt real. But when I bought a mango from an old woman and, casually, almost carelessly, asked, "Have you seen my son?" her hands froze mid-exchange. The smile drained from her face. She pressed the fruit into my palm, hard enough that her nails dug into my skin, and whispered so low I barely caught it, "Don't say his name here. Don't even think it." Then she shut her stall and disappeared into the shadows. Others followed suit. Conversations cut off when I approached. Eyes tracked me, not with curiosity, but with fear. And one night, as I sat outside the villa, listening to the waves, I heard it clearly, two locals whispering in their language near the edge of the water. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable: fear, urgency, secrecy. Then, in English, just two words. Another vanished. That's when I started finding things. The first was a toy, a small plastic car, bright red, wedged between two planks on the boardwalk. Its paint was chipped, sun-faded, like it had been there a long time. The second was a ticket stub. Not mine, not my son's, someone else's. The name on it was smeared, unreadable, but the date was clear. 2 years ago, almost to the day. And the third was the worst. A single sandal, child-sized, half buried in the sand. I carried it back to my villa, turning it over in my hands, trying to convince myself it was nothing, just lost property, just coincidence. But deep down, I knew better, because I wasn't the only one being forgotten. Loneliness does strange things to the mind. The silence of the island pressed in on me like a physical weight. Days blurred together. I stopped trying to sleep in the bed, and instead lay awake on the floor, listening for footsteps that never came. Sometimes I swore I heard laughter in the distance, faint and childlike, carried on the wind. I'd rush outside, heart pounding, but the beach was always empty. Other times I saw figures moving in the windows of dark villas, shadows crossing rooms, curtains shifting. But whenever I knocked on the doors, no one answered. Was I imagining it? Was the island playing tricks on me? Or were there others like me, trapped here, erased, slowly vanishing into silence? On the 7th night, I woke to the sound of knocking, not at my door, on the glass floor of the villa, beneath me. I bolted upright, staring down through the panels into the water below. It was too dark to see clearly, just the faint ripple of moonlight across the waves. But I swear, for one heart-stopping moment, I saw a hand pressed against the glass. Small, pale, childlike. Then it was gone. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, tears stinging my eyes. I wasn't just forgotten. I was being replaced. Because paradise wasn't empty. It was full of ghosts. And as I sat there in the dark, clutching the sandal, I realized something horrifying. I thought I was the only one left out, but soon I learned the truth. Someone else had been forgotten before me. The first message came just after midnight. I was sitting on the veranda, staring out at the endless black sea. The waves were calm, but they sounded wrong somehow. Too measured, too mechanical, like a breathing machine. I was about to go inside when my phone buzzed. A text from my son. "Son, don't look for me." At first I thought it was a cruel joke, some twisted attempt at humor, maybe to punish me for ruining the vacation. My thumb hovered over the screen as a dozen responses flooded my brain. "Where are you? What do you mean? Are you safe?" I typed. "Me, where are you?" The reply came instantly. "Son, stay away from the water." My heart pounded. I jumped up, scanning the shore, expecting to see him standing there, waving from the sand. But the beach was empty, silvered by moonlight. I typed again, fingers shaking, ears shaking. "Me, are you in trouble? Talk to me, please." Silence. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Finally the phone buzzed again. Not a text this time, a voicemail. I didn't want to listen, but I had to. My hand trembled as I pressed play. Static, a garbled hiss. Then, his voice. But it didn't sound right. "Dad," the word dragged out, broken, like it was being pulled underwater. "I'm here, but not here. You shouldn't have followed me." Then a sharp sound, like someone knocking on glass, and the message ended. I replayed it over and over, trying to convince myself it was a bad connection, some trick of reception. But the words never changed. "I'm here, but not here." The second night, more messages came. "Son, 11:22 p.m. Son, 11:30 p.m. They're watching you. By the third night, the texts were broken into symbols, characters that didn't belong, strings of numbers, upside-down question marks. I showed one to the bartender. "Can you read this?" He glanced at my screen, and his face went pale. He whispered something in his language, backed away, and refused to serve me. That's when I realized the messages weren't private. Everyone else already knew. I started recording my own messages, sending them back. Desperate. Me. 12:30 a.m. "Where are you? Just tell me where. I'll find you." Me. 12:47 a.m. "We came here together. Please don't do this to me." Me. "I'm your father. I won't leave without you." No reply. Until one morning, I woke to a single new message. A photo. Blurry. Almost unreadable. It showed the inside of a villa. The same style as mine. The same glass floor. Only the floor wasn't empty. Pressed against the glass was a pale, distorted face. Eyes too wide. Mouth open in a silent scream. And behind it, a hand. Small. Familiar. My son's. I dropped the phone. I didn't pick it up for hours. The paranoia took root quickly after that. I stopped trusting anything. Every time the staff knocked on my door with room service, I refused to open. Every time I heard footsteps outside, I hid behind the curtains, clutching my useless phone like a weapon. Even my own reflection betrayed me. The glass floor showed me moving in ways I wasn't, tilting my head when I hadn't, breathing too fast. And always, the messages kept coming. Some were desperate. "Son, help me. Son, they're close. Son, run." Some were cruel. "Son, they're 4 out 4. You should have gone home. Son, this was never for you." And some were impossible. "Look behind you." I did. Nothing. But I swear, I felt breath on the back of my neck. One evening I tried to leave. I packed my bag, stormed down the boardwalk, demanded a boat. The dock worker smiled politely. "Of course, sir. Just wait here." He turned his back, dialed a number on his radio, whispered. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message. "Son, don't get on the boat. You'll never come back." I froze, and when the worker turned back, smiling too wide, the boat waiting behind him, I ran. Back to my villa, back to the silence. Because I didn't know which was worse, obeying the texts or disobeying them. The final voicemail came on the 10th night. My phone buzzed at exactly 3 a.m. I stared at the screen for a long time before pressing play. The voice was clearer this time. No static, no distortion, just him. "Dad," he said softly, almost lovingly, "you have to stop looking for me." Pause. Then, lower, darker. "Because if you find me, you won't recognize me anymore." Knocking again. 3 sharp raps against the glass floor, then silence. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat there staring at the phone, waiting for the next message. Because he was right. I had already stopped recognizing him. And yet, I can't stop reading. Because there was one message, one I haven't told you about yet. The one that changed everything. And if I show it to you, you'll never sleep again. The locals' warning. Pawn 1200 words. I hadn't planned to talk to anyone again. After the messages, after the photo, after the knocking on the glass, I thought silence was safer. But silence has a way of becoming unbearable. So I went back to the village. This time I didn't ask about my son. I just walked, aimless, until I found the oldest face among them. A man sitting beneath a crooked palm, his skin lined like driftwood, his eyes clouded yet sharp in their knowing. He watched me approach without speaking. I lowered myself to the sand beside him. My voice cracked. "Please, I just want the truth." For a long time, he said nothing, just picked at the fibers of a net in his lap, tying knots with hands that shook only when he wanted them to. Finally, he muttered, "You shouldn't be here." I laughed, bitter, cracked. "Tell me something I don't know." His eyes slid to me then, and what I saw there wasn't anger or pity. It was fear. "You brought your blood here." "Yes, my son." I swallowed hard. "Yes." The old man closed his eyes. His lips moved around words I didn't recognize. A prayer maybe, or a curse. When he opened them again, his voice was lower, almost lost beneath the hiss of the waves. "The sea takes. Always the sea takes. But it must be fed." He leaned closer, the smell of salt and smoke clinging to him. "Once, long ago, it was fish, shells, pearls, offerings from the people. But the sea grew hungry, greedy. Now it demands more." I shook my head. "That's a myth. Folklore. You're telling me my son is." He cut me off with a hiss, spitting into the sand. "Not myth. Rule. You tourists come, thinking this is paradise. But the paradise is built on bones. Every season, one must stay. One must vanish, so the others may return." The words fell into me like stones dropped in deep water. Every season, one must stay. I wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar. But the sandal I found, the ticket stub, the empty villas, the whispers, they all came rushing back, forming a chain I couldn't break. And then, softly, the elder said the thing that made my stomach turn cold. "Sometimes, the blood chooses for itself." I gripped his arm. "What do you mean?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "Your boy, he made a bargain." "No." My throat tightened. No, he wouldn't. But the elder's silence told me he already had. The memories I had dismissed now replayed with cruel clarity. My son brushing me off when I asked about the bookings. The way his eyes had avoided mine at the airport. The strange confidence in his voice when he told me to go home. He hadn't forgotten my ticket. He had excluded me. The old man finally spoke again, voice trembling. "It is not always a choice freely made. Sometimes the sea whispers. Sometimes it tempts.
Promises youth, wealth, escape. Your boy may have thought he was clever, but bargains with the tide never favor mortals. I wanted to argue, but the words caught in my throat, because deep down I knew the elder wasn't wrong. My son had been acting different, detached, almost smug, like he knew something I didn't, and maybe he did. I asked the elder how to undo it, how to take my son back. His laugh was dry, humorless. Undo. There is no undo. The sea does not return what it claims. You must leave before the tide takes you too. I can't leave him. Then you will drown with him. Body or soul, it does not matter. The water swallows all. He stood, gathering his net, and shuffled away, leaving me in the sand, reeling. But before he disappeared into the palm shadows, he turned back. You think you suffer alone, tourist, but you are only the latest chapter. Many came before you. Many will come after. The sea is patient. Then he was gone. I sat there long after, the waves lapping at my feet, the words circling in my head. The paradise is built on bones. That phrase clung to me like wet sand. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my story. This was a cycle. And if you don't believe me, look it up yourself. Search the legends. Read the stories buried under all the 5-star reviews and honeymoon photos. Ask the locals, if they dare answer. You'll find whispers. You'll find records. You'll see names of tourists who flew here but never flew home. And maybe you'll recognize some of them. I should have left then. That was my chance, but I didn't, because the messages from my son hadn't stopped, and one of them still sat unopened. The one that changed everything. I used to think a 5-star resort guaranteed sleep. Egyptian cotton sheets, blackout curtains, air conditioning whispering like a lullaby. It should have been paradise. Instead, every night felt like I had paid 20 grand for front row tickets to my own personal haunting. The first night started simple. I woke at 2 a.m. to laughter outside my villa door. Not drunken laughter, not friendly laughter, childish, high-pitched, repeating the same short bursts, like a recording stuck on loop. I sat up, heart hammering, and crept toward the door. The laughter stopped the second my hand touched the handle. When I pulled it open, no one was there. Just the boardwalk stretching out, empty under the moonlight. But the wet footprints on the wood, those were real, small, bare, leading away into darkness. The second night was worse. This time, I woke to the sound of splashing in my private pool. I froze, praying it was just an animal. But when I slid the curtains aside, I saw shadows moving in the water. Figures. At least 3 of them, their heads bobbing up and down like divers surfacing. I stumbled onto the deck, shouting, "Who's there?" The pool was empty. Not a ripple remained, and yet the towels laid out on the chairs were soaked through, dripping steadily onto the wood. By the third night, I stopped pretending this was paradise. The villa wasn't a getaway. It was a cage. The walls creaked. The glass floor throbbed with the pressure of unseen tides, and sometimes, God help me, I swore the ocean below whispered my name. That's when the shadows began to visit. It started small, a flicker in the corner of the room, but soon they grew bolder, standing at the foot of my bed, sitting in the chairs across from me. Always just human-shaped enough to make me think of my family. One night, I saw my wife's silhouette reflected in the glass. Her hair, her posture. I almost called out before I remembered. She hadn't come on this trip. Another night, I woke to see a figure crouched by the minibar, rifling through bottles. For a second I thought it was my son, the tilt of the head, the way the shoulders sloped. But when it turned, its face was wrong, blurred, melted, features sliding into each other like wet paint. I screamed. The figure evaporated like steam. And still, I stayed. Because where else could I go? I started joking to myself just to survive. 5-star nightmare, I whispered one night, clutching a pillow like a shield. Infinity pool of horrors. Complimentary breakfast of dread. It was either laugh or break, and sometimes I wondered if breaking would be easier. By the 4th night, the noises multiplied. Knocks on the windows, footsteps pacing above the ceiling, even though I was the top floor. Whispers through the keyhole. Once I heard the lock click softly, like someone had opened the door. But when I checked, it was still bolted. I couldn't even trust silence anymore. Silence meant the next sound would be worse. The realization hit me slowly, like rot spreading. Where were the other tourists? The resort should have been full. Honeymooners, families, influencers chasing sunsets. But the dining halls were empty, the beaches deserted, the villas around me dark. I wasn't just haunted, I was alone, or at least, alone among the living. On the 5th night, I finally snapped. I shoved a chair under the door handle, barricaded the curtains, turned off all the lights, and sat in the corner with my phone flashlight. My pulse thundered in my ears. I told myself if I made it to sunrise, I'd leave. Boat, plane, swimming if I had to. That's when I heard it. A knock. Not at the door. On the glass floor. 3 slow, deliberate raps. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the dark water below. And then I saw him, my son. At least, it looked like him. His face pressed against the glass, pale and distorted by the water, his eyes too wide, his mouth moving silently, words I couldn't hear. But it wasn't him. I don't know how I knew, but I did. Because no child should smile like that.
I always thought betrayal would feel sharp, like a knife, quick and clean. But the truth is, it seeps in slow, a rot spreading through everything you once believed. You don't scream when you realize the person you love most has betrayed you. No, you go quiet. You sit still, stunned, trying to convince yourself you've misunderstood. That's what I did. It started with a piece of paper, the ticket. I'd been carrying mine around, crumpled from nerves and sweat. Something about it always bothered me, though I couldn't explain why. The fonts looked slightly wrong, the barcode smudged. When I compared it to others at the airport, theirs looked crisp, clear, real. Mine felt like an imitation. That night, after seeing my son's face under the glass floor, I couldn't stop staring at it, turning it over, tracing the faint red stamp on the back. And then I noticed the words. They weren't airline codes. They weren't even English. They looked older, carved letters, almost runic. And in that moment, everything the elder had warned me about clicked into place. The ticket wasn't just a pass to paradise, it was a contract. I tried to laugh it off at first. God, I wanted to laugh it off. Maybe I was just sleep-deprived, paranoid, imagining patterns where there were none. But then I remembered the airport, my son pulling me away from the counter, insisting I wait outside, his quickness, his urgency. And I remembered the worker, the one who whispered, "Not all passengers return." My stomach dropped, because suddenly, I knew. He had chosen me, not with malice, not with hatred, but with calculation. Someone always had to be left behind. That was the rule. The island demanded an offering, a body, a soul, a life bound to the tides, and in exchange, the others were free. At first I wanted to believe it was random, a cruel mistake, but the more I thought back, the clearer it became. The way he distracted me during the booking process, the way he avoided eye contact whenever I asked about the details. He'd known all along. My son, my boy, my flesh and blood, had handed me over to the sea, and that's when the memories started to poison me. I remembered teaching him to ride his bike, steadying the handlebars while he laughed, fearless and bright. I remembered the night he had a fever, and I stayed up until dawn, cooling his forehead with a damp cloth, whispering, "I'll always protect you." I remembered his tiny hand gripping mine on the first day of school, the way he looked up at me with absolute trust. Each memory stabbed deeper, twisting joy into anguish. Because while I was holding him up all those years, he had been preparing, consciously or not, to let me fall. I stopped sleeping altogether. I'd sit on the villa deck at night, watching the horizon, listening to the sea breathe. The ocean felt alive, like it was waiting for me. That's when the messages began again. At first they were fragments, static, half words bleeding through the phone speaker, my son's voice, but distant, strained. "Don't, stay, water." Every syllable made my heart race. I wanted to believe it was him, that maybe he regretted what he'd done, that maybe he was fighting to pull me back. But the messages grew darker. "Not safe. Don't look." And finally, one that froze my blood. "You weren't supposed to know." That night, I nearly smashed the phone against the wall, but just before I did, one last voicemail arrived. This one was clear. No static, no distortion, just his voice, calm and final. "I bought you time. Don't waste it." What did he mean? Had he sacrificed me to give himself more years? To protect the rest of the family? To satisfy some ancient ritual? Or worse, had he believed he was saving me in some twisted way? I didn't know. All I knew was that the words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like a farewell. The betrayal burned hotter than fear, because I wasn't ready to accept it. I wasn't ready to be the forgotten one, the offering, the name etched into some ancient tide. If the sea thought it could swallow me quietly, it was wrong. If my son thought his choice was final, he underestimated me. I still had breath in my lungs, blood in my veins, and rage sharp enough to cut through the waves, and I made myself a promise. I would not go quietly. I don't remember sleeping after hearing my son's final message. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But when the sun rose the next morning, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be the offering. I wasn't going to just sit here and wait for the tide to claim me. I packed what little I had. Passport, wallet, the cursed ticket that mocked me from the nightstand, and I ran. The resort staff watched me go, their smiles brittle, their eyes hollow. No one tried to stop me, not physically, but I swear, as I passed the lobby, one of them whispered in a language I didn't understand. And yet somehow, my bones understood it perfectly. The sea is already waiting. At the dock, I found a fishing boat tethered to the pier. A young man was coiling nets, his head down, humming a tune that sounded off-key, almost mechanical. "Please," I begged him, "I'll pay you anything. Take me to the mainland, anywhere, just away from here." He froze, then slowly raised his eyes to mine. They were cloudy, unfocused, like he hadn't slept in years. And then he smiled, too wide. "Not all passengers return," he said. The same words from the airport worker, the same curse. I backed away, my breath hitching, and that's when I noticed the water around the boat. It wasn't rippling like normal tide. It was pulling, spiraling down, like a drain, sucking the vessel closer. The boy didn't resist. He just watched me as the boat tilted, sinking into the whirlpool. Still smiling, still humming, I ran. I don't remember how long, but my legs carried me faster than I thought possible, past the palms, Past the bars where tourists once drank, now eerily silent. Past villas where curtains swayed even though no wind touched my skin. Everywhere I turned, the island felt emptier. And yet, I wasn't alone. I began hearing footsteps behind me. Not heavy, wet, like bare feet slapping against stone. I didn't want to look back, but something primal forced me to glance over my shoulder, and I saw them. Figures. At first they looked like ordinary tourists. Their clothes were familiar, Hawaiian shirts, sundresses, sandals, but their faces were pale, waterlogged, their eyes bulging as if they had drowned long ago. They followed in silence, their movements jerky, marionette-like, but steady, and every time I looked back, there were more. I stumbled into the airport. Or what looked like the airport. The glass walls shimmered, warped, as if I'd stepped into a memory instead of a place. The check-in counters were empty. The monitors flickered, displaying flight numbers that didn't exist. Flight 00, boarding now. My heart leapt. Maybe, just maybe, I could still leave. I sprinted to the gate. The doors were open, and beyond them, I saw the faint silhouette of a plane on the tarmac. Relief surged through me, but then I froze, because the plane was filled already, packed with passengers, their heads tilted against the windows, their skin gray, their mouths open, unmoving. Every one of them drowned, and the closer I looked, the more I realized they weren't waiting for takeoff. They were waiting for me. I backed away, gagging on my own breath, when the PA system crackled overhead. A voice. My son's. Boarding final passenger. I screamed, and ran. By now the drowned were faster. Their slapping feet grew louder, echoing through the terminal. Their mouths opened wider, water dribbling from their lips, but no words came. Only a low gurgling chorus that made my ears ring. I pushed through emergency exits, past baggage claims that stretched on endlessly, until I burst out onto the beach again. And that's when the world went quiet. Dead quiet. The figures stopped at the edge of the sand, frozen, watching, waiting, and I realized why. Because something else had arrived. The ocean was boiling, not metaphorically, actually boiling, steaming, hissing like 1,000 kettles whistling at once. The horizon buckled, folding upward, until I saw something rise from beneath the surface. At first I thought it was a mountain. Black rock, jagged and dripping with seawater. But then it moved. It had an eye, massive, glossy, staring directly at me, and when it blinked, the tide surged forward, nearly knocking me off my feet. I turned toward you. Yes, you, watching this, listening to this confession, because in that moment I didn't care if it made me sound insane. I needed someone to hear me. If you're still watching, I said aloud, my voice cracking, tell me, what would you do? Would you keep running? Would you fight? Or would you let the sea take you? Because I had no answers left, no hope, only dread. And then, I heard a voice, behind me, my son. It was my son's voice, clear, familiar, but twisted by the echo of the waves. And when I turned, I saw him, standing ankle-deep in the surf, smiling, holding another ticket. And behind him, the impossible shadow of the thing rising higher, blotting out the sky. That's where I'll leave it, because the truth is, I don't know what happens next. Not yet, but if I disappear after tonight, if this recording is all that's left, then remember this, the sea never forgets its debts, and my son still owes me one. I don't know how much time I have, or maybe time doesn't even work the same way here. I only know one thing. If you're hearing this, you need to listen carefully, because the story isn't over. It never was. I'm recording this from the villa. At least I think it's the villa. The air smells the same. Salt, sunscreen, hibiscus flowers rotting sweetly in the heat. The waves crash outside in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat I can't escape. But something's wrong. Everything feels doubled, like I'm seeing the world through glass. Reflections on reflections. When I walk across the deck, my footsteps echo too many times, and when I look into the mirror, I swear the reflection lags, blinking just a second after I do. I shouldn't even be here. I tried to escape. God knows I tried. But no matter where I run, I end up back in this room. The ocean on one side, my son's empty bed on the other, the cursed ticket on the nightstand, waiting. That ticket, I can't stop staring at it. The red runes shift when I blink, rearranging themselves into words I almost recognize. Sometimes they spell my name. Sometimes they spell yours. Do you understand what I'm saying? This thing isn't just binding me. It's listening, watching, reaching. And now I'm terrified that by telling you all this, I've dragged you into it too. I keep replaying his last voicemail. The one where he said, I bought you time. Don't waste it. At first I thought it meant I was spared, that somehow I was free. But I've started hearing it differently now. The words stretch when I remember them, like they're twisting in my skull. I bought you time. Not I bought you time. I bought you. Do you understand the difference? My son didn't just leave me behind. He sold me. Last night, I woke to the sound of waves inside the room. Not outside. Inside. The floor was slick with seawater, but only beneath my bed. The rest of the villa was dry. And then, the voice. At first it was faint, buried under static. My phone buzzing against the nightstand, the screen lighting up with, no caller ID. I answered, and it was him, my son, except it wasn't. His voice was warped, slowed, like someone trying to mimic him through water. Dad, you're home. The way he said it made my stomach twist. Not you're back home. Not you're safe. Just you're home. Like this was always where I was meant to be. I hung up.
through the phone across the room. But even without it, I could still hear him, whispering in the corners, laughing under the waves, calling my name through the air vents. Sometimes I think he's standing right behind me. Sometimes I know he is. I tried leaving again. I don't know why I bother. This morning I walked straight into the jungle, hacking through vines with a broken chair leg. I walked until my legs gave out. And when I collapsed panting, I realized I was standing in front of the villa again. The cycle doesn't break. It never breaks. And now, I think I finally understand. The elder said the sea always demands replacements, that someone must always be left behind. What he didn't say, what no one ever says, is that the chosen one never really leaves. We become part of it, bound to the tide, trapped in the echo, a warning whispered for the next unlucky soul. That's why the airport worker said those words to me. That's why the fishing boy smiled as his boat sank. That's why the drowned passengers stared through the plane windows. They weren't strangers. They were all the ones before me. And now I'm one of them. Do you hear that? Listen closely. That voice in the background of this recording, that's him, my son. He keeps repeating the same thing, over and over. Go home, go home, go home. But every time he says it, it sounds less like a command, and more like a prayer. I used to think he saved himself by sacrificing me. But what if I've got it wrong? What if he didn't choose freely? What if the sea forced him? What if the real price wasn't his decision but mine? Because the longer I stay here, the more I feel it pulling at me. Not just my body, but my voice, my thoughts, my memories. Soon I won't be speaking as me anymore. I'll be speaking through it. Maybe that's already happening. Maybe this isn't even my voice you're hearing right now. And here's the part that scares me most. I keep wanting to tell you to come here, to see for yourself. The words form in my mouth without permission. I bite them back until my tongue bleeds, but they still push, bubbling up from somewhere deeper than thought, like the island itself is speaking through me, begging for another visitor, another offering, maybe you. The story doesn't end with me. It never does. One day someone you love will invite you on a trip. Maybe not to the Maldives. Maybe somewhere else. Somewhere beautiful. Too perfect to be real. And when the moment comes, when they hand you a ticket that looks just slightly wrong, run. Don't question it. Don't wait. Don't give them the chance to smile and say, I forgot to buy you a ticket. Go home. Because the real price will be you. My son's voice is clearer. He's right outside the villa door, whispering my name. I don't think I can hold him back any longer. So if this is my last note, remember what I said. Tell people. Spread it. Don't let them buy a ticket. And if you see me again, if you hear my voice somewhere it shouldn't be, don't answer. It won't be me. I spent $20,000 on a vacation, but the real price was me.